Today, I want us to walk through another marvel that tech has created. We have now crossed into a new chapter of how humans communicate. Google, Meta, and Apple have all released live translation features in their devices over the past year. And the implications for marketing, brand visibility, and how we connect with audiences are massive. Let's walk down the trail to discover what has happened in this space, how it works without getting into tech jargons, and most importantly, how should marketers approach this? Meta was the first to announce this feature publicly. At their event a year ago, Mark Zuckerberg revealed that the Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses would get real-time translation capabilities. It is designed for face-to-face conversations, which is a bit different from other such devices. Then Google announced the voice translate feature with the launch of Pixel 10 phones. This one's specifically for phone calls. What makes it interesting is that Google uses their Tensor G5 chip to process everything on device. So your conversations stay private. They developed the tech in such a way that it tries to preserve your voice as well. So if you're speaking in English and the other person hears Spanish, it doesn't sound like a generic computer voice. It sounds like you speaking Spanish. Apple announced it with the AirPods 3 and updates to older AirPods models. Their live translation features works across phone calls, FaceTime messages and in-person conversations. Initially, it supported English, French, German, Portuguese and Spanish. They've since expanded it to include Italian, Japanese, Korean and Chinese. When both people are wearing AirPods with this feature enabled, the experience becomes quite seamless. They also took advantage of the device's active noise cancellation to lower the other person's voice volume so you can focus on the translation playing in your ears. So, within a year, a concept Google had shown off as prototype glasses years ago that never shipped to three of the biggest tech companies actually putting this in people's hands, or ears, I should say, is amazing. Now, without getting too technical, let's see how it works. Basically, it's a three-step dance between AI technologies. It first uses automatic speech recognition that converts your spoken words into text. The device listens to the audio, breaks it down into tiny sound segments called phonemes, which are basically the building blocks of speech, and then matches those sounds to words using statistical models. These ASR systems are trained on massive datasets, so they have learned to handle different accents and background noise, even if you are in a crowded airport or a noisy cafe. The system is constantly predicting which words are most likely based on context. Neural machine translation helps with actual translation. Unlike older translation systems that worked with rigid rules and dictionaries, NMT uses artificial neural networks that mimic how humans understand language. These networks have been trained on millions of sentence pairs in different languages. They don't just translate word by word, they understand the entire sentence, the context, and the meaning. This makes modern translations sound much more natural than they did even 5 years ago. The model looks at the whole structure and outputs the most likely translation in the target language. Once the translation is done, it needs to be spoken back to you. This is done through text to speech synthesis. This is where Google's voice preservation comes in. They're using advanced voice models that can take characteristics of your voice and apply them to the translated speech. Apple does something similar, but focuses more on clarity and naturalness rather than matching the exact voice. The TTS system generates speech that sounds human with appropriate pauses, intonation, and rhythm. This entire complex task requires infrastructure to deliver output. All three companies emphasize that they are doing as much of this as possible on device itself. That means the processing happens on the chip in your phone or earbuds, not in the cloud. This is partly for privacy, but it's also for speed. To feel truly real time, the translation needs to happen in under 2 seconds. If every step had to go to a data center and back, you'd notice the lag. That's why Apple's using their Apple Intelligence chip, Google's using Tensor G5, and Meta is leveraging the processing power in their glasses and your connected phone. Right now, these systems support maybe a dozen languages, like I mentioned with Apple a few minutes back. But there are thousands of languages spoken around the world. Expanding support means more training data, more computational power, and more edge computing resources. This is one of the factors behind Apple developing its own silicon. This is also why Google develops Tensor chips. Meta doesn't have any of their chips yet. They use Qualcomm's Snapdragon processor instead. We are also likely to see computing for live translation move more toward edge servers, which are localized servers closer to users rather than centralized data centers. This reduces lag even further and allows the system to handle more complex translation tasks without draining the device battery. Access to data to train neural networks is another requirement. For major languages like English, Spanish, and Mandarin, that data exists. For less common languages, not so much. That's why we are seeing major languages first and others coming later. Even though the internet connectivity globally is not at the required levels, but it helps. Many implementations download language models to the device, allowing offline translation. But updates, improvements, and expanding language support all need network access. Another less obvious part of the infrastructure is better understanding of linguistic diversity. There's a difference between Spanish spoken in Mexico versus Argentina versus Spain. The technology is getting better at handling regional variations, but it's not there yet for every language and dialect. I think with time, as newer generations of devices get adopted and more people use these systems, more data will be generated to improve the models. It's a reinforcing cycle. No doubt that the live translation tech is quite cool. The questions that need to be answered are: how can Google, Meta, and Apple use this technology to enable better ad targeting? And what does that mean for marketers? Live translation generates a ton of language preference data. When you activate this feature, you are explicitly telling the platform what languages you speak and understand. Google knows you're calling someone in Hindi. Meta knows you're having conversations in Italian. Apple knows you're translating FaceTime calls from Spanish. That's demographic data. You're also revealing who you're talking to and in what context. That's behavioral data. This data can inform ad targeting in several ways. Language preference targeting becomes much more accurate. Instead of relying on location or app or browser settings, platform can use your actual language usage to serve ads in those languages or for products relevant to multilingual users like travel, banking, or language learning apps. Behavioral and contextual data adds another layer. Using voice translation during a call with an airline call suggests travel intent, or translating conversations about medical topics shows health interests. Platforms can use these patterns to create audience segments. For example, targeting frequent Mandarin business call translators with B2B software ads, or French cooking video translators with culinary product ads. Device level insights matter too. If someone uses AirPods Pro 3 with live translation, they have invested in premium hardware and are likely to be interested in premium products. Meta can see that Ray-Ban glasses users are early adopters interested in wearable tech. These are proxy signals for purchasing power and tech savviness. I'm not saying that these companies are currently doing all this today. Privacy regulations do not allow them to use such data for ad targeting. But the technical capability exists. And platforms have a history of finding ways to monetize user behavior data within legal boundaries. It's not about tracking specific individuals, it's about creating anonymized audience segments and interest categories. Meta and Google make money from serving ads, but Apple doesn't. They publicly emphasize on device processing and privacy. They claim your translation data stays on your device and isn't used for advertising. But even Apple collects anonymized usage data to improve their models. The real opportunity for Google and Meta is making their ad platforms indispensable for brands trying to reach multilingual and multicultural audiences. As these translation features get better and more people use them, the platforms gain deeper insights into global communication patterns. Apple intends to use it to make their products and services more relevant to cross cultural audiences. Live translation removes the friction that currently keeps audiences separated by language. When someone using Ray-Ban Meta glasses or AirPods with translation can seamlessly consume your content in any language, algos start recommending it across language markets. Today, if you post in English, primarily English speakers see it. But with translation, your content becomes discoverable to Spanish, French, and Japanese audiences automatically. Platforms like YouTube already prioritize videos with strong engagement signals across translated versions. This means creating once and reaching globally becomes realistic. Instead of producing five separate language versions, you create content designed for universal appeal, clear visuals, simple language, and emotional storytelling. There's also an SEO dimension here. When people consume your content through live translation, that generates search friendly metadata. If Google sees that your English blog post is being read and translated into Portuguese frequently, it might start ranking that post for Portuguese search queries, even though you never created a Portuguese version. The flip side is that competition becomes global. You're no longer just competing with creators and brands in your language, you're competing with the best content worldwide. For social media platforms, this is a game changer for recommendation algos. If Meta's algo knows that a Spanish speaker can consume English content effortlessly, it can start recommending that content. Same with YouTube and Google's ecosystem. The algo doesn't have to segment audiences by language as strictly. Content that performs well in one language market can be surfaced to other language markets if the engagement signals are strong. I wouldn't be surprised if platforms explicitly start labeling content as translation available or multilingual ready. They might even add features where creators can enable automatic translation for their content. Imagine going live on Instagram and Meta automatically provides live captions and translation in 10 languages. However, most brands aren't ready for this. They're still thinking in language silos. They have separate teams for separate markets, and those teams don't always coordinate. In order to succeed, the brands will have to start thinking about content with global, multilingual discovery in mind right now. Is there anything that the brands and marketers can do right now? Well, it's always meaningful to start from what you already have. Take a relook at your content strategy. Is your content structured in a way that translates well? Live translation handles words, but cultural context, idioms, and references might not carry over. Creating content that's translation friendly means being clear and direct, avoiding heavy reliance on wordplay or culture specific references. Then look at the content types. Text translation is more mature than speech translation. If you're creating videos, clear audio with minimal background noise will translate better than muddy sound. Professional subtitles or transcripts give translation systems better input to work with. Zoom out and look at your customer journeys and touchpoints too. Where in your customer journey does language become a barrier? A translated product description doesn't help if your checkout process is English only. Look at the complete experience. All this will give you a good sense of where you are in terms of your business priorities and taking advantage of the live translation tech. You can then start testing with available tools. You don't need to wait for perfect technology. Google Translate, DeepL, and built in translation tools in social platforms are a good place to start. See what happens when someone from a different language background interacts with your content or site. One important thing to keep in mind is that while live translation tech is great for real time conversations and casual content consumption, it's not sophisticated enough for high stakes content. So, your brand messaging, legal documents, and key marketing materials will still benefit from professional localization. Take help of someone who understands both the language and the cultural context. And finally, take the approach of thinking globally but starting locally. You don't need to target the entire world immediately. Pick one or two additional language markets that make sense for your business. Test how translation technology helps or hinders your efforts there. This live translation tech is quite impressive. Google, Meta, and Apple have made live translation real and accessible. But it's not perfect. It's good enough to be useful. Digital platforms will absolutely use language data for targeting. It's valuable, it's first party, and it fits into their existing ad systems and ecosystem. But the bigger opportunity isn't just ads, it's organic reach, it's content discovery, it's building audiences that span languages and cultures. For marketers, this is both an opportunity and a responsibility. The opportunity is obvious, access to billions of people who you couldn't effectively reach before. The responsibility is to do it thoughtfully, to respect cultures, to add value, not just noise, to build genuine connections, not just extract attention. Marketing is all about communication, and communication is about being understood. Language is the medium that makes it possible. Emotion, values, storytelling, these are all universal, but you have to be thoughtful about it. We are at the beginning of this shift. The technology will get better. More languages will be supported. The integration will become seamless. The question is, does a brand or its marketing team looks at this tech with curiosity and prepare for it, or play the catch up game? Okay, that's all for this episode on live translation tech. If you found this useful, share it with a fellow marketer or enthusiast. Subscribe to the channel on a platform of your choice. Until the next time, stay curious.